guys, how's it going? We're here, week 3, Dusty and Tata, Fantasy Hour, freaking deuce, triple at something. What's up, Tata?
What's up?
Worst intro in the world.
That was pretty bad.
It's pretty crappy. We maybe need to get a writer on the show. I don't know. But, what are you going to do? I'm here. You're here. What are we talking about?
We're all
What's
here.
going on?
Well, today we are going to talk about 2 decks that we have put together in the deck builder here. And
2 decks. Huh?
it's 2 decks, yeah, something a little different. Instead of talking about just cards on their own, we're going to talk about card combinations, cards as a whole, cards working together for a greater purpose. So we have a couple early versions here. You know, nothing's concrete yet, of course. You know, it's still pretty early and not even in beta yet. But we've seen, I don't know, 175 cards or so probably for PvP, 160. I don't. Yeah, it's not bad. We've seen, well, more than half the set anyway, probably, or at least maybe around half the set. So I think we've seen like enough cards to, you know, build a few decks, try some things out, and you know, just see where we can go from here.
I like it. Sounds like a good plan. Before we get started on that, though, I want to thank Brandon one more time. I know you guys are probably getting sick of this Brandon kid, but thank you so much for the awesome intro and the background and the cool little like overlay things. I don't know how to do this, Dusty and Tata. It was really cool. Thank you so much, Brandon, for that. Also, guys, if you can help us out with the name for the show, obviously you can tell from the intro, I'm struggling. I don't know, like I'm running out of ideas. I was going to say Dusty, the awesome guy in the shadow, was going to be my... But he is no longer the shadow. He actually turned some lights on. Like, that's good. Nothing changed. That's cute. But so if you guys have any cool ideas, like for the name of the show, maybe we'll do like a contest for it or something. I don't know what we're going to do, but just throw them in the comment section. Some cool ideas you might have. That would help us out.
Yes, we will set you up with Dusty's personal hairstylist if you come up with an awesome name for our
I think she's Russian.
Weekly show.
Is the first thing you need to know about her. She is Russian. She doesn't know how to speak English. She does awesome work. Don't go to Tata's because she messed his hair up. Number 3 thing we need to talk about is thank you guys so much for the support. It is awesome. We have all the cool likes and video watches and visits, and just you guys are all really, really cool. I really appreciate it. Once again, John hates it, so every single time you guys like, I punch John in the face. So, which is great. I think that's it. I think that's all we have to talk about before we dive into this thing. I think, John, unless you have something to add.
No, that's great. You know, once again, thank you guys for watching, for commenting on the articles on the website, for liking the video on Facebook or on YouTube, sharing, all that stuff. It all means a lot to us, and you know, we're glad that you like everything, and that's what we're here for. Keep giving you more.
So I actually forgot to do a freaking screen region on this, so hang on, this is going to be super janky, I think, unless this works. Please be... No. Alright, so black screen, I'm so sorry. All John's fault. This is all John's fault. John, you suck. Okay.
Guys, I promise that every week we're trying to be more prepared, but Dusty here, for some reason, can't get the memo.
Awesome. Anyway, alright, we are on the first deck. Once again, we are using hex.potionofwit.com. Awesome website, has helped us out so much with our cool things. So, anyway, John, we'll let you take it over. This is your baby, this is your deck, the old Blood Diamond deck. What do you think? What's going on?
Alright, well, in Magic, black-white control, black-white anything was one of my favorite archetypes for a very long time. And it was usually pretty solid, and in this game you could more or less build something with the same concepts that work mostly the same way, and I think could even be better. So let's start right in here. First thing I want to talk about is the resources. There is 26 resources in this deck. I think that's about right. 25 usually is about where you want to be, but I feel like playing an extra resource or 2 isn't a bad thing for Hex just because of your charge powers.
Sure, I think the more that we see about charge powers, like if a super powerful charge power comes out, like you might actually want to run more resources. Like the charge powers could be strong enough to where that could be a thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the particular champion's charge power for this deck, we would be using the Orc champion, who once you get 4 charges, you pay 2 life and you can draw a card. I feel like playing X resources with that guy isn't the worst idea, and there's there's plenty of ways in this deck to gain life. So I'm not too worried about the life paying part of that.
Yeah.
But so 26 sources. There's 14 blood sources and 12 diamond sources. There are 7 diamond cards in the deck and 10 blood cards in the deck. So I think by playing the extra few blood sources, that pretty much allows us to play more of our blood cards, and also several of our blood cards have double blood threshold. Yeah. So it's not so bad. Let's start. Okay, so after the resources, let's get into the troops. Before we get into the spells, the troops are pretty much what you'd expect to see out of a blood diamond control deck. I'm not playing Bone Warrior, which might seem like a shock at first. I feel like he's a very good blocker, but I just had a really hard time finding room for him in this deck, and I don't think I'll miss him too much, and I really don't think he's that good against faster decks anyway.
Yeah,
but
he's okay, but I think you really need some sacrifice, ability, like some sort of sack outlet or something to really take advantage of him. And obviously, this deck doesn't have a lot of that. So, I think that's a good choice. I think I can see why you wouldn't play him. I think maybe in a mono blood deck, obviously, he's gonna be a lot better. But
sure, but with the troops, we have I don't think there are any 2-cost troops in the deck. No, but so our troop curve starts at 3. And we have 4 Warlock Inquisitors. This guy, I talked about him last week in one of my articles, and I talked about him again briefly in one of these videos. But he's very good. He's probably the best socketable creature that we've seen so far. And for this particular deck, I think we would socket this troop with the life gain gem. And the life gain gem is, when the troop comes into play, you gain life equal to his casting cost. So that works with this guy particularly well with his increasing resource cost. So playing for 3, gain 3 life. He dies. You play him again for 5, gain 5 life. Et cetera, et cetera. I think all 4 copies would have that gem. I don't know if you really want to mess around with any of the other gems, like the Rage gem or the deal damage on entry gem. I think gaining life in this deck is going to be the most important thing.
Yeah, sure. It puts you out of range from aggro really well too. I mean, if you can play this guy out, gain life, block, kill one of their creatures, it goes back to your hand. Like, that's a pretty big blow to aggro. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
and that's what control wants to do.
That's the idea. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And there's 4 copies of him because he also works particularly well with Judgment. So once you play him for 5 or even 7 and then cast a Judgment, you destroy every card in play except for him. So that's also pretty strong.
Yeah, it's also just in case people didn't realize too. Only he gets only this actual copy of the card gets the +2, correct? Like not every copy of Inquisitor. Sure, so.
No, it's just that one copy.
Awesome.
So after him, we have a couple 4-cost troops here. We have Vampire King, who, of course, is probably going to be a mainstay in pretty much every kind of blood deck that's not super aggressive. We've talked about Vampire King several times. 4-cost, 3/3 flyer with a really awesome ability. Not really a whole lot more to say about him. He's pretty insane. And obviously really insane with cards like Murder and Atrophy and anything else that's just target removal.
No, he's crazy. Like, I like him a lot. I think he's really good. Plus he's a pimp. He has his cup and his cane. Like, he just does it good.
Yep, can't beat him. He's he's very good, and that's probably going to be your win condition most of the time. But there's also some cards on the higher end too.
Yeah, he's also has strong. No hair, which is probably a reason why you like him so much.
That's probably why we have this really good
synergy. Sure.
Yeah, synergy. There you go. So after Vampire King, we have Ascetic Aspirant, which is a guy who I wrote about earlier in the week as my card of the week. I'm really high on this guy. With the cards that we've seen so far, I feel like he's one of the more powerful cards in the game. I think effects like his aren't as good in other games like Magic, and I think a lot of people were trying to base this guy's worth off of their Magic knowledge or other game knowledge, where a card like this wouldn't be as good, mainly because his transformation things are permanent. So something like Magic, for example, on level up creatures, it's not permanent, so you have to re-level them. But this guy, you don't have to. So if he dies, you can bring him back with call the grave, or I don't know, something else, and he'll stay at whatever level he was at. So that's that's pretty good. And if you want to know more about him, just read my article from earlier in the week. But anyway, in this deck, he serves as another win condition and just an overall tutor. So
yeah, I think he's awesome. Like, I think he's a perfect card for this type of deck. It's an engine. It's a way for you to basically get the cards you want. Like we were talking about earlier. You can just play a guy out, like play Judgment, for example, or Extinction, and then you can just immediately search for another one if you wanted. Like to do it board wide. Like the position this card gets you in is ridiculous. So
yeah, and he synergizes very well with many of the card draw effects in this deck. For example, Pact of Pain, he's obviously insane with. So at instant speed, you can pay 2 life and 2 resources to draw a card, which in turn will let you search for any card in your deck and add it to your hand. That's very good. And then it also synergizes very well with the champion charge power. So
yeah,
both those effects are pretty strong. It also works well with cards like Secret Laboratory, which lets you draw a card and then discard a card. Just anything that lets you draw a card at instant speed is clearly very good with this guy. And even if they kill him, they're more often than not, probably almost every time, just gonna a 1-for-1 you, so you don't actually lose any card advantage there. So because it's very hard for your opponent to actually 2-for-1 you.
Yeah.
Because you're not putting anything on the guy, and all you gotta do is tap him to transform him. The major downside is in his phase 2. You can't play cards, so you can't really protect him with anything when he's in phase 2, anything like that. Like if they kill him, they kill him. If not, you get to draw an extra card and then transform him again. So that's that's that guy. And then on the higher end of the curve, we have old Phoenix Guard Aeronaut, which we talked about last week in our top PvP cards article. This guy serves the purpose, and there's 2 copies of him, and I'm sorry, there's 3 copies of the Vampire King and 3 copies of the Aspirant as well. But 2 copies of Phoenix Guard Aeronaut. This guy, he's going to slow the game down to where you want to be, or at the same time, he's just going to kill your opponent, outright in about 3 turns probably. So I definitely like him. Is there anything you want to add about this guy, Dusty?
Oh, no, I mean, I like, obviously, we talked a lot about him during our card review, and I think he's an awesome card. Like we said before, this effect is super powerful. And the fact it only affects your opponent is even more absurd. So I think this card is going to be a staple in a lot of control decks.
Right.
Not just, Blood Diamond, or, if you put Diamond in your control deck, this card will be in it.
Yeah. And, there's only two copies of them because I don't feel like I want to draw them every game, and I really don't want to draw multiples. Yeah. So I think 2 is a pretty good place to start with him.
And which is something to mention about, like, the Aspirant we're talking about, is, like, the fact that you have a tutor ability means you can play less copies of cards because you're not, you know what I mean? Like, you actually have the ability to just go fetch what you need. So, like, that's... I think when you look over this deck and you see like the 1s and the 2s, to remember that like we do have a tutor effect in the deck, so it's not going to be as luck based to draw that 1 of or whatever.
Yeah, and as the side note, anyone who knows me knows that I just put 1-ofs in my deck all the time, and but most of the time they're functional 1-ofs, not just straight up play 1 of this card. But we'll talk about that later. But moving on up the curve here for our 6th drop, we have old Captain of the Dragon Guard. This guy serves multiple purposes. He's basically just like another Call the Grave, but he's actually like a creature who can do it. It's a 6-cost 3/3, so I mean that's not terrible stats. And when he comes into play, you can put any troop from your graveyard on top of your deck, and it gets a permanent +1/+1. So that guy is pretty good, and I think he goes a long way to what you're trying to do for your
Yeah.
Your deck.
Yeah, obviously, the target for that's going to be the Ascendant, right? Like that's going to be who we're going to target the most with that card. We could even search him out with him, and that way we have a way to protect our Ascendant if he gets killed.
Right. So, that guy serves that purpose. He's only a one of, but there's one of him and one Call the Grave. So basically, there's like 2 copies of a card that will bring something back from your graveyard to your hand or on top of your deck. So it's not just like one of this guy randomly. It's really like a 2 of. So that's something to think about as well. Moving on here, we have let's see. Oh yeah, top of the curve is 1 copy of His Majesty King Gabriel. This guy, again, there's only one of them. He's not a card you ever want to draw multiples of, and he's definitely not a guy that you want in your opening hand basically ever. He's a guy to search out with the Transcended, and also if you happen to draw him by turn 7 or 8, you can just slam him and probably win the game the turn you play him, but or the turn after rather. But he's very good, and I think it was between him or the dragon, Urnaz, whatever his name is, for the finishers. But I think he wins out overall just because of his secondary ability.
Well, and his threshold too, right? Like he's much easier to play.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It takes only 2 white threshold, whereas the dragon takes 3 blood.
Yeah. Also, he works very well with Call to the Grave and the Warlock as well. Like,
right.
Even if we can't get the Ascendant going or whatever,
Yeah.
Calling the Grave him isn't bad. If he comes, once we play him back out, like we get the same effects.
Yeah. He's pretty strong. So I definitely like him as a finisher. Moving on to the spells. For the removal package, there's 1 atrophy and 3 murders for the targeted removal. The 1 atrophy takes the place of the 4th murder, just for the added utility, and just for various times where the -1/-1 might be better than straight up killing a guy. It is permanent, and it's also very good.
Let's talk a little bit about this card. Like, okay. I know, like it was like one of the first questions I had for you. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of this card. I don't like I don't like a 4-drop -1/-1. But let's talk a little bit about, like, why did you put it in there? What do you think about it?
Well, at first I was with you. Like, this card didn't seem very strong to me. 4 cost, quick action to give something -1/-1 permanently. It's like kind of mediocre. But as more cards started getting spoiled, like Warlock Inquisitor and Phase 2 of the Aesthetic Aspirant, I'm sure there's other examples too, that the permanent -1/-1 actually comes into play pretty often. So to be able to straight up kill a copy of Warlock Inquisitor from ever staying in play is pretty strong. I understand that gives them somewhat of an engine to be able to just play it and bounce it back to their hand. They can only do that really twice probably before they can't actually do it anymore because of their resource threshold.
Yeah, the other cool thing about this card too that obviously I forgot about as well is that it is permanent -1/-1. I feel like that I'm still in that magic mind frame where I'm like -1/-1 doing a turn, that sucks.
Right.
Like,
yeah. This card wouldn't be very good in Magic, but in this game it is permanent and it's actually not that bad.
Yeah.
And the fact that it draws a card is pretty relevant too with our transform guy. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No, I agree. Like you convinced me. I can see where it's. I like that you only put 1 in the deck though. Maybe 2. Maybe put another one in the sideboard or something.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, like I said, it's a functional 1-of, and what I mean by functional 1-of is that instead of playing 4 murders, you play 3 and then 1 of this card, so it functions as the 4th murder. So that's what I mean by functional 1-ofs. Other removal spells in the deck, there is 2 copies of Inner Conflict. Because we have 3 board wipe effects in this deck, we don't want to load up on Inner Conflicts, so I feel like 2 is probably a pretty good number. Other than that, there's also 1 copy of Chaos Key, which is an artifact that's kind of like a catch-all. So you can kill other artifacts with it. You can kill constants. You can kill troops. There's plenty of things that you can kill with it. And I feel like as a 1-of, it's pretty strong. I don't think I'd play more than that right now because of the 5 cost to activate it. But I definitely think it deserves 1.
So what do you mean by catch-all, in case people don't know what that means?
Catch-all is just like a term used for a card that can kill anything. So it's just called a catch-all.
Sure.
So 1 of that, and then there's also 2 copies of Extinction, which is just straight up, destroy all troops. That's very good. And then 1 copy of Judgment. Judgment is just like a functional one of, again, it serves as the 3rd copy of Extinction, but it's just much more situational.
Yeah. One thing that I know somebody, I can't remember who left the comment, but they made the comment, and I don't think we really did make it clear in our video. This card does kill all cards, not just troops, like right. Day of Judgment would, but it actually kills everything.
Yeah, it kills constants, artifacts. It's just like another catch-all, basically. Sure. So it's it's a very good card. The 3 diamond threshold might be kind of a concern sometimes, but not usually. You should be fine most of the time.
Yeah, you're obviously not going to play this very early in the game, so you have time to
get
the threshold up.
And then the last bit of removal for the deck is 3 copies of Zombie Plague. I didn't want to play 4 because I don't like drawing the card really late in the game. And 3 copies should be enough to be able to play it like turn maybe 2 through 4. Yeah. So it's obviously a very good card. It's good like against our deck, and also it's good like against other decks. So I don't see any reason not to play it. The current card spoiled.
It's obviously my favorite card. We talked about this earlier.
Right.
And our only downside with the card is that like drawing it late game is really, really annoying. Like if you need some action, you draw a Zombie Plague. Like that's frustrating. There even could be times where it might be better to draw a resource in this card. So like that's frustrating to have a card like that in your deck. But obviously the effect is super powerful. Also, you also have a way to cycle the card. I noticed like you have a way to discard it if you get it early in the game and then draw something better. I think that's going to be very important with Zombie Plague decks, is to have some way to get it out of your hand if you don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
I think you have a way to do that with this deck, which is really cool.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, we have the 1 copy of Call the Grave, which is what we talked about earlier. Kind of works in conjunction with Captain of the Dragon Guard to give you 2 effects that basically bring something back after they've killed it. The fact that it's 1 cost is pretty strong. In Magic, this card existed. It was called Raise Dead, and it was not good at all. It was, never ever played. There were always much better effects, but in this game, with all the permanent effects, it's much more playable. We'll see in time if it stays in the deck once we have more cards, previewed and spoiled. But for now, I think playing 1 is definitely worth the card slot. So 1 Call the Grave, we have 1 Life Siphon, which is in there as just like a fireball effect to win the game. Fireball effects just X damage spells. So, costs X, steals X, and you gain X. So, it's a pretty basic card. It's just in there to gain some life in a pinch, and also to finish off an opponent if you draw it late game, or even search it up with the Transcendent. And, it just basically, it's very good at what it does, but it just does one thing. So Life Siphon, and then we have our card draw effect is Pact of Pain. We've talked about this card before. 2 cost, pay 2 life and 2 resources to draw a card. Not much else to say about it. Can be done at any time, as a quick action. So it's pretty strong.
Yeah, maybe a little expensive. Obviously this deck takes advantage of it, but 2 life, 2 mana is a little expensive.
Yeah, it works pretty well with the Warlock Inquisitor that's gaining life, and also works very well with our next card, the 1 copy of Eternal Youth. Sorry, Eternal Youth might seem kind of out of place for some people. There's only 1 copy of it, which is kind of odd for an escalation card, but I feel like in this deck 1 copy might be all you need, because if you're able to transform the Transcended to phase 3, you could search it up multiple times in a turn, even sometimes, and gain 5 life, put it back in, draw a card with your charge power or something, search it back up, play it again, gain 10 life. And then that can just keep looping. Next time gain 20 life. I feel like it can just put the out of range against the faster decks. I feel like against some of the decks that are faster, if you have some time to actually do it, searching this card up first might be your best bet. Just gain life against that type of deck really puts it out of range.
Yeah, like, I think this card is super powerful if used in the right decks. I think this is definitely a deck that has the potential to definitely abuse it. I mean, gaining 5 life, and obviously the downside of it is it has escalation. So it's like gain 5, and if you ever draw it again, you get 10, sure. But like, this deck actually has the ability to do it every single turn, and that is actually absurd. I don't think people realize, like, if you're playing against an aggro deck and you play this card 3 times in a row, there's no way they'll win. I can almost bet you there's absolutely no way. I mean, if you use it twice, it's going to be hard for them to win. Maybe even once, it might be hard for them to win. Like,
yeah, there's no way for them to win if you can gain 20, 35 life.
Yeah, there's just no way. I can almost promise you against this deck you won't be able to beat it. And like that's absurd to have one card that has the ability to do that. So.
And then the last card in the deck we haven't talked about yet is the 1 copy of Secret Laboratory. It's just one of those cards that just, it's another card that's very good at what it does. It's a instant speed way to draw cards. Like, I know you don't get card advantage from it because you also have to discard, but you get card quality out of it. So what I mean by card quality is that cards that are not as good late game, like Zombie Plague, you can just draw and then discard it. You could also cycle your extra resources if you don't want to, charge your hero. Just things like that.
Sure. It'd be like also a draw effect in this deck is basically a tutor effect. So being able to tutor for every turn is really good.
Yeah. So that's that's the old Blood Diamond control deck in its early stages. Like I said, this is version 1. I definitely wouldn't take anything out of this to be concrete. But out of all the cards that I've seen so far, I personally feel like this is one of the most best builds for this type of deck.
Yeah, definitely. I like it a lot. Like, I think it's really, really interesting. Obviously, I'm a control player. I love playing control. It's so much more fun to me. I like being able to make decisions and make my opponent think. And this deck obviously has that. I mean, anytime you have a tutor effect in your deck, it's like literally every turn you're making a decision. That's really, really cool. Really neat to have yourself in that position, to have basically the ability to go through and pick the best card every single turn. It really takes the luck out of card games, like with this style, though.
I agree. So that's that deck. We also have a second deck for you guys here. It is a Blood and Ruby, very, very fast type of deck. I feel like this will be probably the premier faster deck at first. I've realized that Shin Hair is obviously going to be popular. Even Mono Ruby will be popular. But I think that this deck is going to be probably a little bit better than Mono Ruby, at least, and probably a little bit better than Shin Hair, mainly because of the utility. So let's jump right into this deck here. The resources, there's only 22 of them.
I messed up. Okay, okay, gotcha. Couldn't remember how I seen that. Yeah, I gotcha. Sorry.
Oh, okay. So the resources, there's 22 of them. It's about 3 less than our other deck, but our curve stops at 4, and there's only, I believe, 3. Okay, there's 4 cost cards for 7. Okay, no, 5. I'm sorry, I can't count. So there's 5 cost cards in the deck. So getting the 4 resources might not happen every game by turn 4, but it will happen. So it's not that big of a deal. So there's 12 ruby sources and 10 blood sources. There's slightly more ruby cards in the deck, and it's also very important that you get ruby early on. So there's just a little bit more ruby than blood. This is mostly a troop heavy deck, which is what most faster decks are going to be early on. You have your 1-drops in Fang of the Mountain God, which is just a 1-drop 2/2, which is very, very, very good. With the downside of at the start of your turn, it does 1 damage to you.
Which we don't care about that, right? Like, that's not a big deal.
No, that is not a big deal at all. And that's very good to get a 2 power guy on turn 1 with also 2 defense that has a very, very little downside. The other 1-drop in the deck is 4 Savage Raiders, which is downside if you can't block, but it's just a 1-drop 2/1.
Yeah.
So that's a card like that is pretty necessary in decks like this. So I'm not too upset about having to play them. Having a 1-drop in a deck like this is really powerful and super important. So you pretty much always want to mulligan until you either have one or have like a fast hand with a ton of burn in it, direct damage effects. So those are the 1-drops. The 2-drops are, let's see here, we have 4 of the Blood Harbinger, which is a guy that we've talked about in our very first video about being probably one of the better cards in the whole game right now. It's a 2-cost 3/1 that when he dies, either your opponent loses 5 life, or you get to search your deck for another copy of Blood Harbinger. So this guy has no downsides.
No, he is awesome. For two I guess in this deck he's a little goofy, I guess, almost, but like because he does cost 2 blood threshold. That's his only downside in the deck, because you can't really open that strong with like a strong red creature and then get him out on turn 2.
Right.
But other than that, his ability is retarded. Like, he's a 3/1 that if he dies, you're either losing 5 life or having to deal with another 3/1 next turn, and that's awesome. Control decks hate those cards.
Sometimes it's even better to play him on turn 3 after playing our next 2-drop, which is Rage Howler. Rage Howler in this deck does quite a bit for us. He's a 2-drop 2/1 with 1 ruby threshold that says pay 1 resource to give target orc speed this turn. So as you can see, all of our creatures except for 2 are orcs. So basically any troop that we play, we can just pay 1 resource and give it speed. So Blood Harbinger, for example, on turn 3 or 4, you just play him and then give him speed. So this guy, I think, is one of the better cards in the deck, and there's definitely 4 copies of him. As you see, there's about 4 copies of every card in this deck, with the exception of a couple. But there's 4 copies of all the really important cards.
Which is basically what aggro does, right? Like that's aggro's thing, is to have consistent draws by having a bunch of the same cards. That way, their openers are going to be pretty consistent.
Yeah, decks like this are really redundant, and the fact that you have a lot of 4-ofs and like a lot of cards that are basically the same card as like something else of the same cost.
Yeah.
And then the last 2-drop is the Ember Spire Witch, which is the 2-drop 2/2 Swift Strike guy that players can't gain life. So he's pretty important for the deck too, but there's only 2 copies of him. Mainly because he's not an orc, but also because he has the double red threshold cost. So
yeah, like if let's say we're just pitting the decks against each other, like obviously this is a really important card versus our Blood Diamond deck. This really hurts that deck and what that deck wants to do. So cards like this is very, very important for aggro versus control matchups.
Yeah, and it's a very good card. So we have 4 Blood Harbingers, 4 Rage Howlers, and 2 Witches for our 2-drops. Going into our 3-drops, we have 3 copies both of Claw of the Mountain God and also of Ragemonger. So Claw of the Mountain God first is the 3-cost 2/2, and he gives all orcs you control Rage 1. So what Rage 1 is, of course, is every time that troop attacks, it gets a permanent +1/+0 bonus. So this guy is insane for our deck.
Yeah, definitely. And what's also really cool about him, too, because it is permanent, like, even if you only get, like, 1 +1/+1 attack off, +1/+0 attack off, and they kill him afterwards, like, that your card still benefits 1 damage. It doesn't go away. Like.
Yeah, exactly. That's why the permanent effects in this game are so powerful. So really, like, we think about a draw where we go like turn 1 Fang of the Mountain God, like turn 2 Rage Howler, turn 3 Claw, or even Blood Harbinger plus speed, and then we play the Claw of the Mountain God, and we attack with 2 or 3 guys. All those guys get permanent +1/+0. So it's like essentially getting in like 3 bonus damage or 3 +1/+0 buffs that are just permanent. So this card does a lot for just 3 resources, and his threshold of 1 blood is very manageable. So I like this guy quite a bit in this deck. And then the other 3-drop Ragemonger is I don't think he's quite as good, but at the same time he does one thing and he's very, very good at it, and that is making your opponent's troops unable to block. So what this guy is he's a 3/1 for 3 with speed, and he attacks each turn if able. And when he attacks, you choose one of your opponent's troops, and they can't block this turn. So I think this guy's very good, and like at worst, he's probably just going to trade with one of your opponent's like 1 or 2 drops, which isn't that bad still because you're just trading 1 for 1.
Yeah,
but
like this deck wants to race, wants to get stuff out and kill you before you have a chance to kill it. So this card obviously helps that by bringing this out and making it so one of your guys can't block and probably killing the other one of the guys. He has whatever has speed, so it's very important to realize that like this card is going to have an immediate effect when it comes out. So
yeah,
it's definitely not as good as our other 3 drop, but definitely still very very good.
Right. Yeah, and it's 3 of both of those, just because it might be better to go 4 claws and 2 rage mongers, but for now there's just 3 each, and we'll test those out and go from there. And then the 4 drops, there's 1 Vampire King, which kind of is a functional one of, and then there's 3 Zoltogs. So Zoltog is the one that we always pretty much want to play on turn 4 or 5. Turn 5 might be better, so we can give him speed with Rage Howler. But he turns all of our other orcs into basically what they say is when this orc deals damage to an opponent, put a Savage Raider into play. So that's super good for our deck, considering almost all of our creatures are orcs, and it's just a good curve topper for us.
Yeah, it is. It's also like we talked about. We talked about this card a little bit before. Was he's really good after a extinction or a judgment or any kind of board wipe. You play him out, he can get you control right back.
Yeah, and it's also worth noting that just him by himself or him and with 1 other creature is a very very good threat. So you don't have to actually overload the board like say against a blood deck or a diamond deck with troops that they can just cast Extinction on you to like 3 or 4 for 1 you. Just play him with 1 other orc and just keep attacking and making a steady stream of 2/1s. So he's really good. I like this guy a lot.
I think he's cool.
Yeah. Then
the only thing I like about him is that he's unique. And I think it makes it kind of clunky to build him because you don't want to have like too many of them in your hand.
Right. Yeah. But 3 is probably a good number for him. You don't want 4, but 3 probably ensures that you draw him almost every game. Vampire King is basically the 4th copy of him, so that if you draw him, you can play him with Zoltog, and have like another threat out there that is very good just on its own.
Sure.
So those are the troops. So the non-troops, the spells are we have 1 copy of Murder, which 1 copy might seem weird, but it's basically like the 5th copy of Burn. So that's pretty much what it does. It destroys any troop, but it doesn't actually do damage. So that's why we don't want to play more of it. Seems like again a very weird card to play 1 of, but if it did damage, then I'd gladly play more. Yeah. The fact that it doesn't do damage, then I don't want to play more than like 1 or 2 of.
Yeah, it's not horrible. With Vampire King too. Like it gives you that little bit of synergy too. It's not a bad card. Like sometimes there's just those cards you need to get rid of.
Yeah, sure. And then so there's also 1 Necessary Sacrifice, which is very good with cards such as Fang of the Mountain God. When it really can't attack anymore, you could sacrifice it to draw 3 cards and not lose that one life a turn anymore. And it's also very good with like Savage Raider because it actually can't block, so you can sacrifice it to draw some cards.
Speaking of this card, I know we kind of skipped over this deck, but like what hero powers are you going to use with the deck?
Probably the hero power that puts a 3/1 speed Blaze Elemental into play. That seems like the best one for this deck.
That card, I mean that elemental with this card isn't bad either. You can bring this out, attack for 3, if it doesn't die, sacrifice the guy's going to die anyway.
Mm-hmm, yep, yeah, that's also another pretty good use for Necessary Sacrifice. But again, there's only 1 of it. It costs 4, and it's not really a card that you want to play more than like once a game.
Yeah, it just gives you that a little bit of that. More cards, to keep going, a little bit more fuel to hopefully push you over the edge if you need it.
Yeah.
Traditionally, like all the really really good aggro decks we've ever seen has that little bit of card draw to kind of keep it going. Keep putting pressure on the board. You don't want to dump your hand and be standing there top decking the rest of the game. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah, right. And then the last 3 cards in the deck are just cards that just do damage to your opponent. So we have 4 burn, 4 rage fire, and or sorry, there's no Infernos in this deck anymore. So I had Inferno at first, but then I cut it like towards the end. But there's 4 rage fire and 4 burns. So rage fire is just probably the best burn spell right now in the game. 3 cost, or is it? There's only 2 costs in that picture. I thought they made it a 3 cost, but the picture that we have right now is a 2 cost, 2 threshold.
I think what happened was in the first stream we saw, it was a 3 cost card, and they actually nerfed it back down to 2, or actually buffed it down to 2. And we didn't, like, they told us that, but they didn't fix it in their stream or whatever like that.
Sure.
Their copy of the game was an old copy or whatever.
Yeah. Well, anyway, I'm pretty sure this card costs 3, but regardless, it does 2 damage to champion or troop, and it has escalation. We've talked about escalation several times before, and this is really good at what it does. If you play this card 2 times in one game, you're probably going to win, almost every time. If you play it 3 times, you'll definitely always win, because that's a ton of damage coming at your opponent's face.
Yeah, what's really cool about this card too is because it has escalation, it affects even cards in your hand. So like, the ability to have, if you have 2 of these in your hand, it's not a bad thing. You know what I mean? Like, it still affects a copy in your hand, which is something that I think people kind of forget about escalation.
Sure, yeah. And then burn is just your typical shock effect. Shock is a magic card that costs 1 red mana, and it does 2 damage to something. So burn is just your typical shock effect. It's a quick action, does 2 damage to anything, and it's just going to be like a staple in all the Ruby decks right now, because we don't have anything else previewed other than burn and rage fire. So that's that's pretty much the whole deck. I think it's pretty powerful, and I'm really looking forward to playing with both these decks.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a really cool deck. Aggro's not really my thing. I don't really like the all-in strategies, but I think that if you're into that, or that's a deck that you like to play, this deck's definitely a good starting stone for that kind of strategy.
Yeah, sure. So that's I think that's all we have for you guys today, or for this week rather. Dusty, do you want to close with anything?
Sure. Just want to say, please check out my video, the Shaggy TV video that we have up now. They'll be coming up every Wednesday. And again, I just kind of take your guys' comments, any questions or comments you guys have. I'll basically choose one of them and just do a whole show about it. You can go in and analyze it, talk about it, whatever it is. Another one we did this week was how to get into trading card games if you're new to trading card games. So I just did a whole show about it. So I do those based off your comments. So every comment you guys leave there really helps me with content and just knowing what you guys want. So thank you all so much for the awesome views already so far, and for all the help and just support. It's awesome. Been great.
Yep, and I second all that. Be sure to check back on Wednesdays and Fridays. Those are the 2 days that we'll be having video content for you guys. And don't forget to put your comments in this video for maybe a suggestion for the name of our video series every Friday. We're desperately looking for a name, because Dusty is super not very good with names. He's pretty bad at pretty much everything. So,
old Captain Underpants down there trying to talk some smack before we get out of here. You're right. It's all my fault. I actually am horrible at names. I'll be honest with you. He is not wrong. I am really bad at names. So if you guys have any suggestions at all, it's gonna be better than what I can come up with. I promise. So.
But yeah, I think that's it for this week, guys.
Definitely, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Again, thank you for all the awesome support. You guys are awesome. Captain Underpants is out. Dusty's out. Thanks, guys. See you later.